Hi, and welcome to Visiting the American Story. Today, we're going to visit 3 places with great historical significance and also hear some great stories of individual perseverance. I'm Howard Gary Shannon. Thanks for watching. Our first stop will be in San Dimas, California. We will visit the Santa Fe Depot Pacific Railroad Museum. Next, we will go to San Bernardino, California and see the very first McDonald's restaurant. And then we will head over to Carlsbad and visit with a gentleman whose dream was to build classic cars. There are towns out there that have a deep historical side to them and also operate as a modern town at the same time. San Dimas, California is one of those towns. One thing that made this town what it is today was the railroad. We are going to visit the Santa Fe Depot Pacific Railroad Museum. We are going to learn how the railroad and museum came to life.
I believe the Santa Fe Railway came into Los Angeles, I believe in 1887. They came through here, and then in 1889, the Santa Fe constructed a station at the same site, and it was a wooden building. And the tracks are still there. There's still Santa Fe still maintains this, and of course now the GO line, or the A train is coming to San Dimas. This area became, like in the early 1900s, it became a big citrus growing lemon capital, you might say, of Southern California. And you needed a railroad to ship all this stuff out. That's why there was a packing house. There was actually several packing houses. There's actually still one on Cataract, part of one that's still, you can recognize it as a packing house. So anyway, and then in addition to baggage and freight and all that stuff, they did operate passenger service. Santa Fe operated the San Bernardino local between Union Station and San Bernardino that would make all the stops. Arcadia, Monrovia, Pasadena. But this line here is still Santa Fe, and this used to be the main line between Chicago and Los Angeles. So the El Capitan and the Super Chief being their premier, passenger luxury liner, would go through here, but they wouldn't stop here. They'd stop in San Bernardino and Pasadena on their way into Union. And anyway, they had a packing house just on the other side of the tracks, which caught on fire in 1933, and one of the embers ended up on the roof of the original station and pretty much destroyed it. And so a year later, Santa Fe constructed what's here now, and it was constructed in 1934, and this operated as a station until 1969, and then they closed it when it was, the shipping citrus was no longer happening, and all the railroads wanted out of passenger service, and Amtrak took over. But the railroad was really, it made this little town what it is, in my opinion.
Inside the museum, you will find what was a working train station. You will see a bench for waiting passengers, a timetable, and also a place to buy a ticket. Here you can also see pictures that tell the story of when the original building was burned down by an amber from a packing house and then was rebuilt in 1934. You can also see signs of the packing houses that were here in the area. Upstairs, you will find a library full of great books for those who have projects that require such research. Here too, you will see great train antiques, more train history, and classic model trains based on real trains. For example, this wonderful piece of art came off an actual train, the El Capitan.
the railroads were probably struggling, and they had a group of rail fans called railroad boosters, and they used to charter fan trips on the Pacific Electric back, in the late 1930s and stuff. And the railroad boosters was really the forerunner of what then became the Pacific Railroad Society. You had the Pacific Electric, and then, which was an interurban. They had about 1,200 miles of track, which ran out to San Bernardino, Riverside, Long Beach, Santa Monica. And then you had the LA Railway, which operated streetcars within the city limits of Los Angeles. And the LA Railway had a couple of funeral cars where they would actually, they stopped using them, I believe, in 1926. I know they had at least 2 cars, and one of them they converted into regular passenger service, and the other one they kind of mothballed. And the reason I'm bringing that up is about in the late 1930s, the railroad boosters I believe that was about the time they became the Pacific Railroad Society. They purchased the car, and then they brought it up to the Cajon Pass at the Summit Station, where they had an actual, they made it like a club car, and it was a really good spot for observing, the Cajon Pass, for watching trains coming by and stuff like that. So that was kind of like the early days. It really was started by a bunch of guys in their late teens and early 20s that were rail buffs, wanted to save what was being discarded, keep it from being scrapped. They wanted to save it. Yeah, we all kind of, I'm obviously much later, these guys were, started operating before I was born. But they really wanted to, they hated to see the Pacific Electric go.
If you ask anyone if they've ever been to a McDonald's, most of us would say, yes, we have. This is because McDonald's is the largest fast food franchise on the planet. In fact, it's the largest franchise of any sort on the planet. How many of us know the story of McDonald's and how it became the biggest franchise? Well, thanks to the movie a few years ago, it's a bit more well known. We are here at the original McDonald's and now museum in San Bernardino, California. We are here today to learn more about that story and the museum and its founder and all the other folks that put it all together.
This is where Richard and Maurice McDonald took their little barbecue business and revamped it into a hamburger establishment. And that is the basis of McDonald's as we know it. And they had several other types of businesses before they would migrate to San Bernardino. In the Monrovia area, they established an outdoor eatery that they called the Airdrome. And this was a kiosk-like structure that had a giant milkshake on the roof. And it was called the Airdrome because it was next to the airport, which is no longer there. Eventually, they would move that structure here in pieces, and they would settle here in San Bernardino on this location. And this is where they started as a barbecue joint. This would be late 30s into the 40s during the tail end of the Depression era. And in 1954, they shut down the facility, reassessed everything, and realized they were making more money selling burgers and fries. And that's when McDonald's as we know it started. Ray would come in around 53, 54. Ray was a multi-mixer salesman. He sold the milkshake machines. The brothers had made a rather large order for those machines, which struck Ray's curiosity. Most people order 1 machine or 2 machines. The brothers were ordering about 6 to 8. And Ray came over from Illinois out here to California and very likely saw what was going on and had his awe moment and proceeded from there. He would eventually work for the brothers as a franchise agent. His job was to open restaurants and so on and so forth. And he was the one that really sort of creates the monster that is McDonald's. The museum was started in 1998 by Albert Okura. Albert Okura is the founder of the Juan Chicken Corporation, a company that is still thriving here in San Bernardino. We've been here, we're going on our 40th year now. Albert was a great admirer of the McDonald's story, good, bad, or indifferent. Albert saw Ray Kroc's creation of McDonald's as really the great American free enterprise story, the success story, that a little guy can start off with something small and make it something big. This, by the 90s, was city property. The city had plans to demolish this property. Albert took the opportunity, made a deal with the city, bought it as a foreclosure, and started this museum. And from 1998 till about 2021, this place doubled, not just as this museum, but also as the corporate offices for Flamboyant. And so he was, while growing his company, he was also growing this museum. He also wanted to acknowledge to a certain extent the McDonald brothers, because they've been erased from the company's history and it's only recently that that's changed. But that's only a direct result of the movie, we think. But Albert also, in his own quirky way, believed in destiny. It was his destiny to create this place. He thought it would be a really good place to bring in tourists. He thought it would be a really good place to bring something interesting to San Bernardino, because let's face it, there's not a lot of stuff for tourists here. He saw potential here where other people didn't. And this is really his legacy to a certain extent. And then we do our best to keep it going. You know, we're not just honoring the brothers, we're also honoring Albert. We want to make sure that his legacy keeps going. We want to do right by him and the family, because his work was never done. This was never a complete museum. He always had big plans for this.
The mural on the outside of the building is one of the largest you will ever see, and it is unfinished. It was started by Phil Ye and Roy Murray. Phil and Albert had an arrangement where he would come in 2 or 3 times a week for 5 years and work on the mural.
Albert had originally decided to have pictures on the walls, and we're talking now the nascent days of the internet. People learned about us and they began to come here and donate things. And that's what grows the collection. This is now, we're coming out of our 25th year. Everything here is donated. It's by the public, and not just from local people, but people coming far and wide. We have items here from France, Great Britain, Scotland, Australia, the top of my head, Brazil, Scotland, England, China, one of the Slovakias or Slovenias, one of those two guys, Czech Republic. We have a small section from Russia when they still had a McDonald's, Japan, China, of course. And we started recently having Latin America, Peru, Nicaragua, Guatemala, places like that. We like to focus on the packaging. The packaging is important because it's the best example of what is offered everywhere else. So people that come here, they can see, oh, and they have these weird products in other parts of the country that they may never see. So we like to have as much variety. Also, the Happy Meal toys are pretty much the same, with very few exceptions, unless you're talking about toys from, say, Japan. Hello Kitty is super huge in Japan, so they're always putting out something that is unique to them. And that's where we like to concentrate on things that are unique to you. And we also have a lot of vintage packaging from the States, because apparently people save this stuff. This foam packaging that was not supposed to be biodegradable, which we now know it is, people save it, and then once they find out about us, they'll send it to us, and we try to find a space for it, but we're a small building. We don't have a lot of space for it right now, but that's kind of how it works.
Classic cars, muscle car performance, making old cars new again, improving them, making them better than they were when they left the factory. That is the passion of this gentleman, and this is his story.
I'm from Crawford, Nebraska, a little bitty town in northwest Nebraska. Maybe 1,000 people live there. So I lived out in the country. My dad had about 25 acres, and he drove a hay truck. So he hauled hay for cattle. So had 2 trucks for a while. But my granddad had a really big ranch back in the 50s that got turned into a state park Fort Robinson State Park. I think that's probably where I got some of the mechanical stuff, was from my dad, because he was really into dirt bikes and cars when he was younger. But so he had tools around, and he'd always help him out with the semi truck, greasing stuff and cleaning hay out of the frame, and just farm kid stuff, I guess. So there's not a lot of things to do in Nebraska. Where I'm from, you're either a truck driver, a cowboy, or a mechanic, and sometimes you do all three. I really like driving too when I was a kid, because I had a school permit when I was 14. So my dad taught me to drive when I was 9. I could drive a 4-speed pickup when I was 9. Then I was driving the hay truck in a field when I was 11. So there were not a lot of people where I grew up. So if somebody asks you to go hop on this tractor, get in that pickup and move it, you're the guy to do it. So just figured it out, which is kind of nice because you got room to figure it out. So I actually started out after I got out of school, college, working in dealerships, Chevrolet dealerships, and I just didn't like doing that. It was just how fast can you change parts? And I'm not a fast mechanic. I like knowing how something works, and I like improving it. I'm just not a fast parts changer. I like building cars and improving them and changing the looks of them and making them do something better. And in a dealership, it's just how cheap and how fast can you put something together. It just wasn't what I was looking for. So I bounced between construction and building cars, and I actually worked for Halliburton for a while too, cement and oil wells. And I was driving to work one morning, like 4:30 in the morning, and I'm half asleep, and I just about missed this corner, doing about 80 miles an hour, and I was like, man, I'm gonna end up dead so I can go shovel dirt for somebody. And I was just like, I need to do something that I want to do. I had actually been reading hot rod magazines and straight rod magazines since I could learn to read, like since I was like 5 or 6. And so that was a really big influence on me because I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. And so there weren't a lot of hot rods or custom cars around. So the stuff you'd see in a magazine just might as well have been, flying saucers. I mean, you just didn't see stuff like that. I think first time I saw American Graffiti, I was probably 11 or 12. Part of it was really cool because I could recognize the cars in it, and the other part was really cool because I was like 12 and all these guys were older than me, so it was like cool stuff you could do in high school. So yeah, it was pretty influential. Vanishing Point, that was a really cool one. California Kid, yeah, those are big influences. So it was stuff that I didn't get to see every day. So right out of high school, I wanted to be a mechanic, but I didn't have a lot of experience. Went to community college in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, just a 2-year college. And I paid for my way through school by working in the afternoons at a Panhandle Co-op, which they do like fuel delivery and all kinds of ag-related stuff. So I worked in their maintenance department while I was going to school. And so I kind of worked on anything I could get my hands on. I bought a 68 Chevy Impala out of the junkyard when I was 16 for $400. They had a blown motor. We drug it home with a chain, and I got the car running. It took me 6-8 months, and I had put another motor in it and different transmission. But that was just kind of trial by error. It certainly wasn't a nice car when I got done because I was 17, but it was fun.
Here in the shop are some of the current projects he's working on. Here you will find a Cadillac that is getting a new suspension, rear end, and engine work. This one also is getting a new modern suspension, including a custom front suspension and a 500 horsepower LS3 engine. Up here you will find a stock 51 Mercury coupe, just waiting to be restored. It's also for sale. This Corvette has a 427 big block with a Muncie manual transmission. It has 390 horsepower.
There's like 2 horsepower levels above that one. That's a 390 horse. There's a 435 horse. And then there's a really rare one called a ZL1, which has an all aluminum motor, which they made 2 of those in '69. So I've never seen one in person. Seen pictures. Well, I was just an apprentice, which I'd been doing that for a while, being the little guy on the totem pole as an apprentice. but they liked, to tell you the truth, the kid that I replaced, I think he slept in that morning. And I was looking for a job, and they were kind of mad at the other apprentice, so they fired him and hired me. So I was so cheap that you could hire me and try me out, which is, and see what you had. So I really wanted the job, which is a lot if you want. It's how much drive you have is a lot of it. Something happened that spring. I worked for him about 9 months, and then that shop closed down. So it happened pretty quick. I moved back home. I had a pickup, and I had 2 pickups, 260 Chevy pickups. I had one on a tow dolly, and I towed them all the way back up to Nebraska, and the pickup I was towing with kept breaking down, and I'd steal parts off the one on the trailer to keep it going. So I made it back to Nebraska, and I got a job in another hot rod shop about 2 weeks later in Rapid City, South Dakota. I went back to work building cars. There's a shop out here in Escondido called Hot Rods and Custom Stuff, and they were hiring people. And I saw it online, and I just applied for it. He wanted an interview, and I flew out here, got the interview, and they wanted to hire me at Hot Rods and Custom Stuff. So I came out here like 2 weeks later, had a pickup, a toolbox, and a motorcycle, and that was it. And once I got to Hot Rods, I was really building cars. And I had cars in magazines. So I'd had cars in Hot Rod and Street Rodder. There was a 32 Ford Roadster that I built the chassis for, the channeled body. The wood in the bed was raised. That truck was super custom. That was in Old School Rods, I think. It's cool when you go to a car show, it's kind of just by accident, and you run across something that you built years ago and somebody's taking care of it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. There's always something to do. So I just get to pick and choose, which is nice.
Well, that was a lot of fun. We heard some great stories. And it just goes to show you, with a lot of hard work and perseverance, dreams can come true. I'm Howard Gary Shannon. Thanks for watching. If you would like more information on Visiting the American Story, see our website, visitingtheamericanstory.com.